I found a great deal on 10 stepping stones on Facebook Marketplace, so I decided to create a path between our step and our fire pit in our backyard. In this video, I'll show you just how easy it is. Hey, thanks for watching. I'm Melissa from Welcome to the Woods, and you'll see here my husband and I are moving each of the stones sort of into the place we're thinking they'll go. Now, these stones were very heavy. They were about 70 pounds each, so I could not do it myself, although typically I like to DIY solo. If you watched my DIY retaining wall video, you'll see that this time, working with stone, I remembered my gloves. Now you'll see here that the dimensions of my stepping stones are about 16 inches by 16 inches and they're about 4 inches thick. Now the thickness is important because I am going the easy route and getting heavy duty stones that are more than 3 inches thick so that I don't have to put down a paver base. If you have a stone that you're going to make a pathway out of that's thinner, you're going to need something to stabilize the ground underneath. So you will need a paver base or a gravel. I spent a long time moving these stones around and measuring between them so that they were fairly centered on my fire pit, fairly centered on the step to get into the house, and that they were all the same distance apart from each other. I ended up making the space between about 10 inches across the board, and I ended up staggering them not only vertically, but I also staggered every other row horizontally. This is just what I decided looked nice in my space, but the beauty about laying a stepping stone path is that it can be whatever you want. There's a lot of creativity involved in this step. Just make sure that if you want grass to grow between your blocks, that you have at least 4 inches of space between each stone. I forgot to mention that I did this all in one day and took my Instagram audience behind the scenes. So if you're interested, go and follow me on Instagram. Now, this stepping stone path, I initially decided I was going to use a trowel to cut around the sod to try and figure out like where I'm going to shovel out and dig these stones down. But that ended up being kind of difficult. So I came up with a better method of using spray paint, and I'm going to just spray a thin line. It doesn't matter if I get spray paint on the stone because that's going to be underground anyway. And I'm spraying a thin line around the whole square, and then I flip all of my stones over so they're out of the way, and I start digging my holes. When digging, I just made sure to get the entire white spray painted line in this piece of sod I was cutting out. So if you're going to do this project, you want to plan ahead of time where you're going to put your sod and where you're going to put your dirt, because everything that you remove needs a home, and sometimes this stuff is not very easy to get rid of. I dug all of my holes to the depth of my stone, which happened to be 3 3/4 inches. I want my stones to be mostly level with the earth so that they don't catch on my mower. And I made sure to tamp it with my very professional 2x6 block. I know I probably should be using a real tamper, but these stones are pretty hefty. I wasn't worried about it. You'll see there that what I did was I tamped all of the soil and then I added some fresh loose soil on the top, and that is so that I can work on leveling. I used a rubber mallet to hammer and level, and when I got it to a point that was level, the only thing to make sure is that you don't have any area that rocks. So I would put my stone down, step on it, and try and find an area where it rocks back and forth, and try and tamp that down more, situate it like so. Every single stone took a lot of finesse this way, and this was undoubtedly one of the most strenuous parts of the project. So I just continued on and on like this. It took me about 3 hours, and it was definitely very hard. I was grateful every time my husband came out to help me here and there. I had an area where I pulled out tree roots that I put in a pile. I had areas where I put in my rolled up sod. That green thing is where I was putting my dirt and then dumping it in a few areas of our yard. And just in general, it was pretty smooth going. I want to invite you here to subscribe to my channel if you like to watch DIYs. I'm always up to something, fixing up our 130-year-old old farmhouse to be something modern, new, clean, and nice. So I recently shared quite a few fun projects. I'd love for you to check them out. That was the very last stone, and I love this clip here. Look at the happiness on my face. Finally finished. Here I'm just checking quick that everything is still measured the same distance away, because sometimes your stones, when you lay them, can get slightly tilted and then they're not laid parallel. Although I had tried my best to level as I laid them, I did come back and check each one because pretty much everyone needed a little more finessing, and this was just such a tedious part that I did end up just kind of going at it, putting the stones in the ground, and then deciding I was coming back at the end to finesse and level. Now it's time to get dirty. You're going to put some loose soil down in all of the cracks around your stepping stone from the hole you dug, and then put in tiny pieces of the sod that you had removed earlier. I ended up using way more of my sod rolls than I anticipated, so make sure you set those aside in a good spot so you can use them again later. I just ripped the sod off of like the big squares that I took out, and this seemed to work fine. Once you have your sod planted in, be sure to run a little more loose dirt on top just to get that kind of packed in there, because the next step is we're going to water it all down. This step is so fun, like your own little reveal. I love how my stepping stone path turned out, and it really is a great visual indicator for people to come out of the house and lead right to the fire pit. This is such a heavily trafficked area of my lawn. I'm hoping that this stone pathway will save some of my grass from getting trampled. We now have an even more landscaped area right off of our back porch for the perfect entertaining spot. Thanks so much for watching, y'all. We'll catch you next time on Welcome to the Woods.